Before we get into the code, let's consider what contracts we have prior to using our object. We have a legacy code that may pass 6, 4, 2, or no parameters. We've also allowed other numbers of parameters by providing default values for all of them. Now we have a contract that expects a single object parameter. To honor all existing contracts, we have to maintain the same number of parameters. We can add more, but having less breaks the contract. Since the maximum number of parameters we've allowed so far is 6, we must allow for up to 6 parameters. Keep in mind, JavaScript doesn't enforce the existence of parameters in function calls and ignores extra parameters that are passed in. We can use this to our advantage. We're expecting 2 distinct uses of our function, 2 patterns. Legacy code calls it without an object parameter, and new code calls it with an object parameter. All we have to do is inspect the type of the first parameter, if it exists, and make certain assumptions from there. Notice that we still have name parameters for the 6 original values we contracted for. We've moved our options object to a local variable. We then inspect the type of the first parameter. It has a name of left, but there is nothing to enforce that the value of that parameter is intended to be the left location of our rectangle. It could very well be an object that contains all the parameters we need. If the first parameter is an object, we copy it to the local variable and ignore any remaining parameters that may have been passed in. If the first parameter is not an object, we assign each of the named parameters to the appropriate property of the options object and continue as before. If any of the parameters were not defined, the logic that assigns default values will take care of that situation. If no parameters are passed, as was the case with our very first function, the options object will just be filled with all default values. Now we can call the function with an object parameter, and our legacy code should all work too. Remember, the footer rectangle, the red one in the middle, was done with the object. All the other rectangles and squares were done with legacy code. It's all working. Let's just bask in the glory of our work. Okay, but not too long. That lemon chiffon and burlywood is still bothering us. What a journey! We're ready for future expansion now. If any more parameters are needed, we can just make allowances for a new object parameter in the function, and we won't break any contracts with legacy code. There is one final thing we can do, and this is just for us. Since we've been so good about not adding any additional functionality for the end user, we're going to make life easier for future developers, including us.